bottom line is we carry on with our job and stop the transmission as fast as we can.
Tonight, just when you think it's over, Nunavut records its first case of the COVID-19 virus in weeks. How not to make an arrest. A social media video of an incident at a Saskatoon grocery store gets results.
Leaving a home at age 18 is difficult enough if you have no supports.
And a tribal council in Manitoba gets proactive in the fight against homelessness. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Nunavut has had 0 cases of COVID-19 since the end of March, but that changed today. The territorial government announced a positive case, but this time it's in the capital. The government confirmed 1 positive case in Iqaluit. Canadian North Airline has confirmed it is one of their employees who recently arrived in Nunavut as an essential worker. That means they didn't have to do a 2-week quarantine to enter the territory, unlike most everyone else. According to Nunavut's chief public health officer, the virus being in the capital is going to be different than when it was in other communities.
It's going to be different from other communities for a variety of reasons. There will be, there's greater potential for more spread, but there's also greater resources, and there's also easier access to, in many ways, support mechanisms and alternate places to isolate. So we'll have to, bottom line is we carry on with our job and stop the transmission as fast as we can.
Just over 20% of the population in Canada have received the first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination. But in British Columbia, 1 couple that got vaccinated still tested positive. As APTN's Tina House tells us, doctors are warning the public to not let their guard down.
Dr. Shannon MacDonald is the acting chief medical health officer for the First Nations Health Authority in BC. She's also the face on television advising the public to stay safe during the pandemic.
We really recommend to people that they continue to stay home as much as possible, keep the bubble small, less faces, bigger spaces, wear a mask when in public, when you can't keep a distance of more than 2 meters from the people around you.
Dr. MacDonald says both her and her husband have been strictly following all of the recommended safety rules. And on March the 8th, they both got vaccinated. However, 2 weeks after that, her husband began not to feel well.
He started sniffling, and that's not like him, and a little bit of a cough. And he works in healthcare too, so I said, well, you can't go to work coughing. You need to go get tested, because that's what you would tell your staff to do, so you have to do that too. So he was tested on the Monday morning, the 22nd, and it came back positive. Yikes, because we've been so careful.
To be cautious, Dr. MacDonald was also tested for COVID-19.
The next day I was tested. My first test came back negative, but over the next few days I became increasingly symptomatic, going through boxes of Kleenex, headache, fatigue. And so by Friday the 27th, I went back and was retested and tested positive.
Dr. Ray Chaboyer is a Cree physician originally from the York Factory First Nation in Manitoba. He says it just goes to show you that if someone like Dr. MacDonald, a well-known figurehead for the First Nations Health Authority, can get the virus, anyone can get it, even after getting the vaccination.
It is definitely important that people are aware that they do not stop their protocols for protecting themselves from the infection. Vaccines are all about probabilities, not certainties. So you're less likely to have serious infection, you're less likely to be hospitalized or to die from COVID infection once you've been immunized, but it does not 100% protect you from getting infected.
And Dr. MacDonald believes it was because both her and her husband were immunized 2 weeks prior. That's why their cases were mild. But it's still a mystery how they got infected. Dr. Chaboyer is urging everyone to get vaccinated so the general population can develop a degree of immunity to COVID-19.
It only works if everybody is vaccinated.
Tina House, APTN National News, North Vancouver.
Well, have you received your vaccine? We'd love to hear from you. Here's how to continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on our website, aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. A human trafficking investigation by police from Nova Scotia to Alberta has led to the arrest of a Mi'kmaq man in Nova Scotia. Alberta sheriffs are transporting the man to Edmonton to appear in an Alberta court. Angel Moore reports.
According to the Alberta Law Enforcement Response Team, a human trafficking investigation began last June after a woman contacted the Nova Scotia RCMP alleging she was forced to work in the sex trade in the Edmonton area in the fall of 2019. Alberta and Nova Scotia human trafficking police units collaborated, and last week, William Muse, 31 years old, was arrested at his home in Bear River, Nova Scotia. He is well known in the Mi'kmaq communities in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. Muse has been charged with human trafficking, receiving material benefit from trafficking, procuring someone to provide sexual services, advertising sexual services, and distributing intimate images. Alberta's Human Trafficking Unit spokesperson Mike Tucker said,
It seemingly started off as a normal relationship. It wasn't something that suddenly a switch is flipped and you find yourself working in the sex trade, but a series of events that were very calculated grooming in this case that led to that.
If you suspect you or you know someone who has been trafficked or has information, please call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-833-900-1010 or your local police. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Tubuktuk, known as Halifax.
The Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations is calling for a grocery store security guard in Saskatoon to be terminated immediately and have charges laid against them. It comes after a video posted online and shared and seen widely. Please note the video we're going to show you now is violent and potentially upsetting. The video shows a struggle between a First Nations woman and a store security guard. FSIN says the woman is a member of Peter Ballantyne Cree Nation. Chief Bobby Cameron says the guard's actions are disgusting and beyond disturbing. The owner of the Fresh Co. grocery store, Chris Fowler, posted a statement on the store's Facebook page. Fowler identifies as a Métis owner and says he is beyond shocked and horrified. He also says he has ended the contract of the security officer in the video. Saskatoon media report the woman in the video has been charged with theft under $5,000 and assault. And you can find more on that story on our website, aptnnews.ca. Time to step aside for a quick break. Still to come, a new place to call home for youth aging out of care.
The 18 suites, we could probably fill these up next week with young people that are currently looking for places to stay.
Welcome back. Indigenous women are at an increased risk of developing cervical cancer. A study in BC has found Indigenous women there are 92% more likely to develop cervical cancer than non-Indigenous women. As APTN's Sarah Connors explains why that is and what's being done to encourage women to get cervical screenings.
Marian Erickson is from the carrier community of Nakaslea in northern BC. During a routine gynecological exam, her doctor told her precancerous cells were found and she would need a colposcopy, a medical procedure used to find cancerous cells. Erickson says she was unfamiliar with the terminology or what it would entail.
I didn't know what that was, and I always heard stories of sterilizations growing up.
Frightened, she was reluctant to go back until her community convinced her otherwise.
A strong DACAS woman said, "Don't mess with cancer."
The experience led Erickson to write a letter to her doctor explaining why she was afraid.
He said, "I thought you were going to sterilize me," and that was my real fear.
Dr. Shona Mitchell-Foster is an OBGYN and assistant professor at UBC's Northern Medical Program. She says a recent study found a 92% higher incidence of cervical cancer among First Nations women in BC, and that First Nations women are more hesitant to get screened due to issues like historical trauma.
If your, generations of your family has experienced that, and when we talk about women's health, we're specifically talking about a very dark legacy of things like forced sterilization of Indigenous women.
She also says First Nation women face more barriers to getting screened, like lack of culturally safe options or living far away from health centers.
In northern BC, we have these vast geographies where we have to, provide care to women. And depending on what season you're traveling in, it could take several hours to get to a provider to access screening.
Peel the pouch open from the top corner.
As a way to increase screenings, Mitchell-Foster is leading 2 pilot projects in northern BC that send kits to women in the mail so they can self-screen in the comfort of their home.
They're able to do it themselves, so they don't have that kind of the invasiveness or discomfort of requiring a pelvic examination. And we've had really incredible uptakes.
My grandma, Monique, was a midwife.
As a master's student at Thompson's Rivers University, Erickson is working on a doula training program to revitalize her people's traditional midwifery practices, helping women feel more comfortable when accessing gynecological services.
I think more investments in midwifery education would be a strong start to helping especially rural and remote communities because of the safety that it brings.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Tribal Council in Manitoba has just bought an old apartment block in Winnipeg. They're rebuilding it as part of an affordable housing project for young people aging out of the child welfare system. Daryl Stranger has more on that story.
This burned down abandoned building may not look like much right now, but it will soon have 18 new apartment units for young people aging out of the Child and Family Services system in Winnipeg.
The 18 suites, we could probably fill these up next week with young people that are currently looking for places to stay.
The Shawinigan Abenuje organization is part of the Southeast Tribal Council in Manitoba. They received just under $3 million from the federal government's Rapid Housing Initiative to buy the building. They're calling it their Mamengo program. Mamengo is Anishinaabe for butterfly.
Leaving a home at age 18 is difficult enough if you have no supports. So what the Mamengo tries to do is tries to extend that the wing of support around young people that are getting to adult age, and sometimes they're having children already and they're still needing support, whether going to school or going to work. Finding independence in their own place.
Construction started 2 weeks ago. The goal is to have people in the building by December. Brandy Cole is Mamengo's project manager. She says the revamped building isn't just about apartments.
The top 3 floors of this building are going to be 18 apartments. 6 of them are 2 bedrooms, so we'll be able to house up to 24 young people. The lower level is going to be resource space, so we'll have some programming rooms, a cultural space, we'll have a computer area for our young people, a teaching kitchen, so there will be a lot of learning, sharing, and growing and healing in that kind of space down there.
Cole hopes this initiative will be part of the bigger picture of ending homelessness.
A lot of our homeless population has experienced time in CFS care, and a lot of our homeless population who was in CFS care experienced homelessness within a year of aging out of care. So if we can fill in the supports in that gap of time, then I think we have a better chance of preventing homelessness long term.
Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Fantastic project. Well, time to step aside for another quick break, but as we head to break, here's a look at a story coming soon on APTN National News about a team of Quebec archaeologists who have a bone to pick with a municipality just outside of Montreal.
Across the frozen St. Lawrence River, just outside of Tiohtià:ke, known today as Montreal, is the quaint municipality of Notre-Dame-del-Perrot, home to swaths of thick, undeveloped forest, soon to be clear-cut for housing development. But under the upturned soil and refuse, archaeologists believe exists proof of settlement by a prehistoric indigenous nation, not far from the banks of the river they used for travel. It's a potentially groundbreaking discovery, but it hasn't prevented developers from breaking ground at the site. So what remain, and who's responsible for protecting them? I've been doing some digging of my own. I'm Lindsay Richardson, and I'll tell you more about what I've found coming up soon on APTN National News.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Hammy Kurak took this picture of his 9-year-old granddaughter tending to the sled dogs while he chips some ice from an iceberg. And we'd like you to send us a picture of that iceberg chipping too, Hammy. Like to see that one and share it to our viewers. Keep those photos coming by sending them to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Time now to take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, +1 with snow in St. John's, 5 above with showers for Halifax, -4 in Inukjuak and Kuujjuaq, 3 below in Nain. +8 with showers in Montreal, 11 in Chibougamau. +4 with a chance of snow in Sault Ste. Marie, 8 and showers in North Bay. 11 under sunny skies for Thunder Bay, 7 in Sioux Lookout. 5 in God's Lake, 7 in Norway House and Thompson. 6 in Winnipeg, 6 in Brandon with snow. 8 in Regina, 12 for Saskatoon. 8 for Uranium City, 14 in Meadow Lake. Much warmer in northern Alberta, 18 for Grand Prairie and Peace River under sunny skies. 14 for Medicine Hat, 18 with the sun out in Edmonton. 17 in Vancouver and sunny, 22 in Victoria. 14 for Dease Lake, 20 in Prince George and Smithers. +6 in Old Crow, 9 for Whitehorse. 3 in Yellowknife, 9 in Fort Simpson. -7 for Sax Harbor, snow and 3 below in Paulatuck. -9 for Chesterfield and Whale Cove, -4 in Arviette. 18 below in Resolute, -7 in Iqaluit. Overseas now, French President Emmanuel Macron toured the restoration of the Notre Dame Cathedral, marking the 2-year anniversary of the fire that destroyed much of the historic church. Macron promised the cathedral would be rebuilt by 2024, but others have said his timeline is not realistic. The pandemic has slowed down the pace of reconstruction, with materials for rebuilding coming from all over the world. Funding sure hasn't been an issue. More than $1.25 billion Canadian was raised. Snow corridor in central Japan reopened today, completing the Tateyama-Kurobe Alpine route, which stretches through the northern Japanese Alps. The road was cut through snow measuring up to 45 feet high. Last year, visitors were not allowed to walk in the area due to COVID-19 restrictions. But this year, they can experience the snow corridor on foot until June 22nd. Walked through some 45-foot high snow here yesterday. Does your dog have what it takes to be an official dog beer taster? Bush is offering $20,000 to the right pup. It's the brand's special dog brew, which is a canine-friendly, alcohol-free bone broth. The company is looking for an official chief tasting officer to help the brand expand the line. The gig also comes with pet insurance and free dog brew. That's a strange one. Well, as you heard here earlier in the newscast, human trafficking is making headlines in Nova Scotia. The province has high rates relative to the rest of Canada. In this week's episode of APTN Investigates, Trina Roach looks at why that is and what makes Indigenous women vulnerable. Here's a preview of Exploited.
It's been going on since the whole history of Nova Scotia. People just don't want to look at it.
Human trafficking, a hidden epidemic, but one happening in plain sight.
These traffickers are traveling with their victims in public, especially pre-COVID, in the airports, the train stations, the bus stations. They're getting stopped by police, so it's really a crime that's happening in the open, I guess, is the biggest surprise to most people.
Anyone can be a target. For Indigenous women, trafficking is tangled with the history of colonialism.
You know, the young girl Pocahontas, she was kidnapped, she was exported, she was taken away from our country.
Child welfare, missing and murdered Indigenous women, incarceration.
Over and over again, that was part of the narrative, is that folks had experienced trafficking and exploitation.
And I just really want, you know, our young women to believe that they're worthy, you know, they're sacred.
More important work from an award-winning journalist. You can watch Exploited Friday on APTN Investigates right here after the news. Well, it's Thursday, and that means a new episode of Nation to Nation is coming up right away. Here's host Todd Lamarand with who he'll be interviewing this evening.
I speak to Chief Patricia Bernard. Her First Nation, the Madawaska Maliseet Nation, was just awarded the largest land claim settlement in the Maritimes. Just like any land claim, it took decades and federal government opposition to be overcome. But it was Chief Bernard's personal involvement when still a student decades ago that got the ball rolling, which has ended up with a settlement payout that will put $100,000 in each band member's pocket. As well, I speak to someone from the Grassy Narrows First Nation in northwestern Ontario. Community members there still suffer from mercury poisoning, and with cleanup of their environment still not happening, they're threatened by a modern-day gold rush. It'll happen in just a few minutes. I'll see you then.
Todd's looking pretty splashy there. Nice look. You can catch him and the entire show in less than 2 minutes' time right here. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.